the Three Body Problem on the Netflix, which is obviously so Dan Benioff, DB Weiss, the two guys who were in charge of an adapted Game of Thrones, which they obviously, I think everyone, it's pretty unanimous that everything they adapted up through the works that had been completed by George R. R. Martin are exquisite, in that it's any of the elements that, or any of the story or episodes that exist where they had to basically come up with the story because he hadn't released or finished those books.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm assuming he ever does, that's likely to be very different than how Game of Thrones took the story, after the point at which he had gotten to. And so, at least in my mind, it's like, okay, they did really well where they had material directly to pull from. When they were left on their own, they kind of, they kind of leaned heavy into some easy, what they would hope to be easy wins. People still watched it, but a lot of people are pretty let down by the last season or two. But so, all that to say, so going to that, they have full source material to work from here. So there's comfort in that, any changes or deviations from the original story, they're doing for what they believe is the benefit of their adaptation of it. Which, because there's a Chinese version that actually came out in 2023 that's 30 episodes long, which I also watched, which might be 30 episodes, which is in like 30 episodes of like a full show, like 50 minute show.
Golly.
In like the budget of it. And it was made in China. And so I imagine that their government and funding, the author's Chinese. So this is like something for the country to be proud of, honestly. That it came from China. So they had this out a year ago, and I haven't read the books because I knew about them, but I'd been reading other things and I was like, okay, that seems interesting. But after having like watched those 30 episodes, I can only imagine, and based on what I've read about them, that it's might be the closest adaptation of a book to a series, as far as if you think about adapting a book into a show, how much detail is normally, or movies left out. It's because otherwise it would be like a 50 episode show if you really want to have everything. Well, this is a 30 episode show, so they really have probably as much of the book as one could hope for,
as you could.
And which is crazy, So there's a lot of episodes that are arguably slow in the Chinese version, and that like really take time on things. That the American version, it was solid. It was solid. I think it did a good job in making it compelling and very well executed in that regard. It did for me feel rushed. 8 episodes, right? So they cover a ton of ground, to where I think the importance of some of the events that are occurring aren't necessarily felt as much, because, and it's one of the basic premises is that it starts off, there's all these scientists around the world are committing suicide or dying in random ways, like the brightest minds in the world, because all these particle accelerator experiments that they're doing, that they've calculated, and they are with certainty going to have outcomes within at least an established range, are producing results that are so vastly outside of the range of what should be considered acceptable that it's basically like saying physics doesn't exist anymore.
Oh.
It's literally like saying, I'm going to drop this and it's going to float up instead of fall down. Like the manner in which these tests and experiments are running are going haywire is so, like, they're committed to lives of science, and they're seeing their belief in reality fundamentally uprooted. And so, and that impact on them it's touched on in the American version, but like they spend a lot more time on just how crazy it's driving scientists.
I see.
And like with
and that's in the Chinese version.
The Chinese version, yeah. So the Chinese version just spends a lot more time on pretty much every element that the American show does. And the American show actually takes one character and makes it into like 5 different characters, which was interesting. Like, so they do some things that are interesting and cool. I think it had a really strong ending, like, which, you know, if they don't get greenlit for the second season, I'd be surprised. It hasn't been official yet, but either way, it's for me the most realistic, quote unquote realistic story presenting the idea of aliens invading. So it's like, okay, aliens invading. That's like done so many times, but it gives the aliens such a backstory, and as to where they come from, why they would ever want to try and leave their habitat, how they even found out about Earth existing because of some random signal that was sent out in the 70s, that we were able to send it out as far as it reached only because this genius scientist was able to figure out how to use the sun to amplify the signal by like timing it in the specific points, like whenever Jupiter's having these events occur that are affect. So it's like we're basically able to like get like do something that a civilization way more advanced than ours would be able to do. It's like we're able to like cheat code and pull off some crazy miracle that our civilization wasn't. There's different like rankings at different levels been able to do. And so it's this really foreign, you know, aliens, they get the signal and basically realize that Earth is a way better environment for them to live than where they are. Because the 3-body problem is, it's 3-body problem because they live in a star system or planetary system that has 3 suns. Okay. And the 3 suns basically cause it to be, there's chaotic eras and stable eras, and basically like 90% of the time it's a chaotic era, and chaotic era means like the planet's being destroyed and civilization reborn hundreds and hundreds and thousands of times, to where it's taken like civilization number 1,000 or something to even advance far enough to get to technologically advanced to get the signal and that. So more advanced than us, but not advanced enough to where they're like 400 years away based on the speed they can get. They know that in 400 years, based on the fact that we live in a stable environment and where we're at technologically, that we'll surpass them. But they want to get to us. And so that they found a way to like launch these photons that are basically supercomputers to Earth, that like because they're so small that they could launch them and get them here quickly.
Okay.
And these super photon computers are what's disrupting all these experiments and causing scientists to go crazy, because they've determined the only way to keep us from getting technologically advanced enough to combat them is to destroy our science and stop us from advancing technologically. Which is, I just, everything about it I love, because it's so cool, unique, you know?
No, it is very unique.
And that's all I'm going to say. But
you were talking about the thing with the 3 suns and the chaos.
Yeah,
and
dude,
I mean, you want to
ask a lot of time on that.
I mean, you asked my mom about that, raising 3 sons and the chaos that was from that, dude. I mean, there's a lot that came from that. But no, dude, that's honestly, you did a great job of being able to explaining that, because I've been wondering. I watched the first 2 episodes. Watched the first episode and I fell asleep. I think midway through the second episode.
Yeah.
Or maybe I think we watched the first 2 and on the third one I fell asleep. Yeah. Either way, it's really irrelevant. My point with it is just that it's like, even with just the little bit that I watched it, I still feel like there was a lot of questions I had, and you did a good way of answering a lot of that, because you never really explained any of that to me. You just like kind of played it. Yeah. And I see what you mean about how, so just only off of watching those first few, I see what you mean about how they didn't necessarily, where I entered the show at, you had a better context of understanding the surrounding environment and kind of like why certain things were happening. I feel like, because you had seen the other version that had 30 episodes. I know. I was able to learn. Which, by the way, isn't that only just as many episodes as that was in second season of Twin Peaks? No.
I'm saying, I think there was like 22 or something. Right?
Yeah, but, David Lynch. And I'm
saying that was like an average network TV show, right? But to have for 30 episodes of like a high budget show.
No, that's crazy.
It's crazy.
That is insane. 30 episodes is insane. And how many seasons was that?
Well, so they just had the one.
Or just the one season of 30
adapting
episodes.
The one book, and I hope that the Chinese make, because there's a trilogy of books, so I hope that they do all of them, because I would love to see them see it all the way through. I'd expect them to, man, because it's got to be like one of the biggest sci-fi novels that's come out of that country ever, right? But either way, so yeah, that I was just that's so this gets and the science and it's hard sci-fi as far as like it being as fundamentally scientifically sound as possible, while still of course make extrapolating and ideas from there. But it's all based and the Chinese show gets like really nerdy. It's like really like you're like in a class sometimes. It's crazy. But so Three Body Problem. I'll stop there.
Well, yeah. Maybe here'd be a good spot to take a little break.